What's up guys, how you doing? Welcome to another video. So today I'm going to try and teach you all the basics of photography in less than 5 minutes. And by the basics of photography, I mean some key tips and the real important skills that will help you improve your photos loads and loads. If you follow just these simple tips, simple pointers, your photos will improve massively and you will have the basic skills to take a nice looking photo in less than 5 minutes. Before we get into it, I can ask you to do all the usual stuff for me. Make sure you hit that like button, helps me out so much on my channel and I really do appreciate it. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. This is the first video of 2022 and we're going to have so many cool videos this year. Really looking forward to it. Make sure you subscribe to follow along. So look, no messing around, let's get into this. First of all, we're going to talk about the composure of your photo. And by that I mean, how does it look? How do you line up your photo? How do you set it up to make it look as good as possible? First thing we're going to talk about here is a thing called the rule of thirds. Now you might have heard of this before, but what it is it suggests that rather than positioning your subject smack bang in the middle of your photo, you should try to line it up with one of the thirds. That might be vertical or horizontal. For example, when someone takes a landscape photo, so often the temptation is to put the horizon right across the middle of the photo. And this is a perfect example of rule of thirds, because actually if you had to think about that photo, what's that photo about? Is it about the foreground and the scene that you can see? Or is it about the sky maybe? Is it a sunset? Something like that. Because depending on whether it's about the scene or about the sky, you could adjust your horizon between the top third or the bottom third and it can really improve the composure of that photo. We use this Grand Canyon one as an example. Right there, the horizon across the middle. It's a nice looking photo, but we can improve it. This photo obviously is about the scene rather than the sky. So if we move that horizon roughly with the rule of thirds, get it to the top third of the image, it just looks like a nicer, better composed image. The same thing works with people. If you're taking a photo of a person, if you try to follow that rule of thirds and maybe rather than getting them right in the middle of the picture, get them lined up roughly, slightly to the left, slightly to the right. It adds to the image, it improves the overall look and the composition, and it can lead to a better photo. I would however say sometimes with a photo of a person, the rule of thirds goes out the window and perhaps making that subject central just looks nicer. Last thing we're going to talk about with composition is if you have a subject that is moving fast. It could be something like a car, for example. Ideally, when you're setting up your composition of your photo, you want to try to give your subject somewhere to go. If you have your subject up too close to the edge of the frame without anywhere to go, it doesn't create that feeling of movement. Same goes with people. Give them somewhere to go. If you have them wedged up against the side of the image when they're obviously moving fast, it doesn't look as pleasing to the eye. So there we go, some key points on composition. Let's move into some of the settings. First up, looking at shutter speed. Now this is actually a lot easier than people think. In very simple terms, if you have a subject that's moving, especially if it's moving fast, you want a faster shutter speed. That's then going to freeze your action and will mean you don't get a blurry image where something was moving too quick for your shutter to be able to freeze the action. With something stationary, like maybe a person who you know is going to be stood still, you can get away with a much slower shutter speed. Now if you know how to shoot manual mode, fantastic, but if you don't worry. Two things you can do. You can check out my video right here and you can learn about manual photography. If not though, don't worry. If you're using Canon, turn your camera into the TV mode, which is shutter priority. On Nikon, that's the S mode. It's shutter priority mode. Set your shutter speed to that faster or slower shutter and the camera will work out the rest of the settings for you. Okay, let's talk about aperture. Now, aperture is to do with depth of field. So if you are going to be photographing something where you want a big depth of field, like maybe a landscape, you want a much bigger aperture. By that, I'm talking about the number. In theory, there's actually a smaller aperture, but we're not going to worry about that right now. F11, nice big number. That's going to give you a wide depth of field and you'll get lots of stuff in your image in focus. If, however, you're aiming for an image where you want the focus on the subject and you want the background to be that nice blurry kind of creamy effect, you want to get your f-stop, your aperture right down low to a nice low number, and that will give you that shallow depth of field. Again, if you know how to shoot manual, fantastic. If not, you check out my video, or you just turn your camera into aperture priority mode. With Canon, that's AV. With Nikon, that's the A mode, and then you can set your aperture where you want it, and it will work out the rest of the settings for you. And that really is about it for the basics. There's other stuff we could talk about. We could talk about ISO levels and stuff like that. But really, for me, I think if you adapt those key skills and incorporate that, especially if you are a new photographer, your images will improve massively. I've done other videos on more detail with some of these kind of topics. Another great thing you can do, on my website, I sell cheat cards that explain all this and give it to you kind of in a nice laid out, simple to follow format. If you are interested in one of those, go check out my website. The link is in the description below. And if you use the code YTube10 on checkout, you'll get yourself 10% off. You don't have to get one of those to be able to do this though. Follow the basics, practice loads, do check out my manual photography video, which I will link at the end of this video. Check it out and your photos will improve massively. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. Guys, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you on the next video.